Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you to Zama, Amaia, Stephen, and Marta for being here this afternoon with us and to talk about this. Back in the trend, are we losing the battle for girls in STEM? So thank you very much for your participation and for being here and for being part of this Hack STEM event. I'm Diego Cabo. I'm part of the Spanish Startups team, and very glad to be here and to co-organize this event one year more with Siemens Gamesa, with Rocío from Siemens Gamesa.
Hi, Diego. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Hi, Stephen, Marta, Zama, and Amaia. It's an honor for me too to be here today. It's our third edition together, Diego. It's already 3 years, and we're very, very pleased to have you today to talk about this very important topic. I work for Siemens Gamesa. We are an engineering and technological company, and only 90% of our employees are women. So you can imagine how important that topic is for the company and also for society, because as Marta is probably going to tell us later, we are losing a lot of opportunities and economic opportunities to keep growing. Well, then I don't want to further delay this roundtable. Please, Zama, I pass you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosia. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Zama Mkhize. I am in South Africa right now. It's the middle of winter, so it's very cold. So if you are in summer, enjoy it. For me too, as well. So I will introduce myself, and then I will give it to the panelists to introduce themselves. Then after that, the introductions, we will have a conversation around the topic of are we losing the battle for girls in STEM. So I'm a lecturer in gender studies at the African Gender Institute at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. I did part of my PhD in Pennsylvania as a Fulbright scholar, and I did my postdoctoral fellowship at the Center for Critical Research on Race and Identity at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So my previous research focuses have been on modern polygamy, law, family, culture, and African feminism. I just published my first book titled Polygyny and Gender, which was released last year, September 2021. My research now focuses on women in high-stakes degrees, such as science, technology, engineering, mathematics, STEM, and I've written numerous articles around this topic, which will be released later in the year. I also founded the African Feminist Foundation, which is dedicated to supporting and mentoring and advancing women in STEM fields. I'm an African feminist academic and an avid tennis player. So that is me. So I'll pass on to my fellow panelist, Amaia. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Zama. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining this seminar. This is the first time I'm taking part in this seminar, and I hope this is a great success as it seems. So I'll talk a bit about myself. I'm Director of Research of the Basque government in the Department of Education. My background, I'm actually university professor in pharmacy. I did a PhD in pharmacy some years ago. And I was developing a research career, started in the Basque country, but I've been also in doing different research stages in Scotland, in Norway, and in Canada. I'm on leave. I'm still a university professor, and when my work in the government finishes, I'll come back to the university to continue with the teaching and research that I was doing before. I'm still teaching a master course to keep on the path. And when I was working in the university, I was also head of the innovation in education service in the campus of Álava. The University of the Basque Country has 3 campuses, and I was the head of the innovation in education service in there. And regarding my job currently in the Basque government, I'm in charge of the scientific policy, basically to help researchers to do their work. Make calls for hiring researchers, make calls for allocating funds for projects and so on. But as the Department of Education, we were really keen on going ahead also on the educational part, and a member of the part of the Vice Ministry of Education of the Universities and Research. So the PAR University also deals with the education that the universities coordinate. So as I was mentioning, as the whole Department of Education, we were keen on trying to understand why not so many people go into STEM. And as the Basque country, or we probably may know that the Basque country is a very technological region in Spain with really high innovation skills, and the regional university scores is one of the leading territories in the European Union. But we were really keen on why we don't have so many students in STEM as we may need in the near future, and especially female students. So we launched 4 years ago a strategy with 3 main ideas. First, to discover and raise the visibility of different actions that were currently being taken in the framework of STEM education in the Basque country, to guide activity related to STEM education that is currently being undertaken, and to propose new actions to provide a boost to STEM education under a defined framework. We set 3 specific goals. One of them is really linked to today's topic, because we want to inspire professional vocations and aspirations in the STEM environment, but with special attention to female students. So we were launching 4 years ago, and we were designing different activities for the whole educational systems from kindergarten to university to work together on STEM, and specifically on STEMs addressed to female students. And we are coordinating, the Vice Ministry of Universities and Research are coordinating the whole strategy of the Basque government, and that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Amaia. Thank you. Marta, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you, Zama, and thank you so much for inviting me and the OECD to be part of this panel. When I finished my university, I joined UNESCO, and there I actually work with gender issues, mainly in Africa, but also in other countries in Latin America. And there seems to be a big issue that we work. But then I joined the OECD, and at the OECD countries, it looked like gender had reached equality, and therefore there was no need to work so much on it, because girls were going more to university than boys, etc. But then I started recently to look at the data from a gender perspective, and found out what Amaia just exposed, that actually girls are not going so much to study certain STEM fields, not all, but certain. And that actually the inequality had grown. It's not going, I mean, in 1990s, women reached equality in access to university. Like not they reached it before, but that was when there was the same number of boys and girls going to university. And it looked like that was it. Soon girls will go into STEM also, but it's not happening. Actually, it was happening, and now it's decreasing, which is quite impressive, no? And then, so now our goal is to look deeply into these issues, because as Amaia said, it's not only that girls are not going into technology studies, it's that boys are not going so much either. So, but girls are actually going less. So that's kind of the focus of our research in all our countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. And Stephen, please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Zama. Hi, everyone. So I am lead concept developer at Lego Education, part of the Lego group here in Billund, Denmark. I have been here for 8 years, and I work in the first Lego League robotics competition, which is one of the biggest global robotics competitions for students between the ages of 4 and 16. Obviously, one of our big agenda points is how we can appeal to girls as much as we appeal to boys in the world of robotics and STEM. My background is as a teacher. So I was a teacher for 13 years in the UK, 7 of those in secondary education and 6 of them in primary education. And while I was at primary school teaching, I took my master's at Cambridge, and I focused on children leading their own learning, understanding the balance between curriculum and fun. And also a large portion of that was understanding gender stereotypes, the typical gender roles of children in the classroom, and the hierarchies that creates within a classroom, specifically within elementary classrooms.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And thank you to the panelists for the very interesting backgrounds. So we will go into some questions that I put together and we'll have a conversation around that. So someone said a very interesting quote that stayed with me. They said, wherever there is money, there is no woman. So that quote said a lot, especially in terms of STEM and technology, and that what is going on in STEM. So what would you say are the 3 obstacles or challenges prohibiting women from advancing in STEM? Anyone can jump in.
I would say that.
Yes, I think I saw that. I said that quote in the.
Yes. Thank you, Marta. Yes.
Yeah, I saw it in our data. When I look at the evolution of women accessing different jobs, that it looked like jobs that, so there is, I mean, Stephen talked about stereotypes, which we are also studying. I mean, honestly, we don't understand why girls don't go to science or to certain science, because yes, stereotypes is a big role and we have to study them, and cultural constructs, and it depends on the country. But then because we compare countries, it doesn't quite stick to all countries. I mean, it could act different in different countries, and the stereotypes move. So, and I think they move sometimes with money. For example, doctors used to be men, and now that it seems that in some countries doctors are not such a well, they don't have such a good salaries, then women are into that field. So, for example, women used to study mathematics when they used to teach, which is not a very rewarding profession, but now mathematics are used more for technology, which has very high salaries, and now it's a men domain. So it does apply wherever there is a profession with a high salary, is highly dominated by males. And if that profession changes and suddenly salaries, because professions move a lot, it's less rewarded, then it's when women enter. So we don't know if they enter and when the salaries are low, or the lower salaries because there is women. So there is kind of, this is a generalization, obviously, but there is a lot to study. I think there is a lot of research to be done seriously about why women are not going into certain STEM careers, because they are going into some, like biology, like mathematics. For example, technology, there is less and less women, but when you take biotechnology, you just add bio to it, caring about others, then it's full of women, and there is no men. And also, we need to study why men don't go into more caring and welfare professions like teaching. For example, it's important to have teachers, men teachers in primary school. It's important to get men to take care of others, right? To be in hospitals, to be nurses, it to be doctors too, because now there is less men in some countries. There are doctors. So I don't have an answer, but I would like us to try to put more research, more funding into looking into this segregation. And the more there is gender equality in a country, the more we see the segregations in the schools. So it's been very interesting how this moves from country to country, from countries with different equality policies, that they don't all work as we would like to.
Thank you, Marta, for that. And we'll definitely talk about that, what you just said, the last part, the more equality, the more segregation.
I would add something else on that, because I think it's not only a matter of salaries, because at least what we're seeing in Spain and what we're seeing in the country, as Marta was mentioning, in the health system, nowadays it's mainly girls who go through university studies related to health, basically medicine. So we will see probably a quite amount of doctors in the future in our hospitals. But at least in the Basque country, they have very good salaries. But I think when we go into the private market, and well, the salary usually comes together with the less flexible way of life. I mean, they have to travel a lot. We have no timetables and so on. So sometimes it's a matter of high salaries, of the salaries, but also high quality, so-called quality of life. So sometimes women try to balance the personal life. They want to have children and so on. So you're looking for a more secure job. So work in a hospital, you have a high salary, for instance, in the Basque country, and it's a secure job because you are a civil servant. So it's also it's something else than a salary. It's also the way of life you're going to have. You work for a private company, and especially in the technological area, that it will force you to travel, or it will force you to have a really long working hours and so.
Yeah.
You have to analyze as well. So it's more than that.
Yes. Thank you. Stephen, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll add in a couple here, and I'll take the perspective of younger children as well, as that's sort of more my area, but still big challenges we have even in engaging children from these earlier stages in STEM and seeing it as interesting and fun. I think the first one is that on a general level, we still have a fairly segregated society between boys and girls. The things that they are quote unquote allowed to do, encouraged to do, acceptable to do, and we have to bring those boys and girls activities closer together. We need it less defined by gender. Again, not offering solutions here, just pinpointing some of the huge issues that we have. We have been guilty of that here at the Lego Group. For many years, we have had city Lego sets, which are grey and police and cars and for boys, and we've had friend sets, which are pink and purple and flowery and have animals in, and they are for girls. And we have recently realized that this is not where we wish to communicate, how we wish to communicate, how we wish to put across what STEM is. Lego bricks are just one form of STEM manipulative. They're an engineering building block, and we take that very seriously. That for many kids, we are the first time that parents, adults around them really focus on the fact that they're doing some kind of engineering, some kind of technology activity at home building. So we take that very seriously. So and I might get into some details later on with some of the later questions about how we're sort of trying to redress that. But that's a big one still. You go down a pink aisle in a toy shop, you go down a blue aisle in a toy shop, and we need to break that barrier. Perception, society in general, obviously parents. There's been a study going on through Bayer since 2015, I think it is, that shows that, and this is with the Education Development Center in New York and SRI International, and that's showing that 95% of parents want to be involved in their child's education and learning at home, but don't necessarily know what their role should even be, even if they felt confident to teach or to help teach their kids. They don't know what their role should be. The other 5% are comfortable and confident in knowing what that role is. So 100% of parents are saying, let me be involved in what my child's doing at home, but such a huge majority of them don't know how to start. So perceptions in society we need to address. And I think the third one I would just add in here is that COVID has hit that big reset button in so many countries, which I guess we all knew could come at some point. And this was the breaking point where a huge majority of girls had to go back into the home. They had to be homemakers, and they had to look after younger siblings, and they had to cook and clean. And they've dropped out of school, university, work, not just girls, women of all ages. So I think that's highlighted this fundamentals, again, societal perception that when in doubt, it is the woman in the relationship that goes back into the home and out of the workplace and out of STEM education.
Very good points by everyone. Yes, and the point about the stereotype, I know in also social sciences, this I've seen, in that when a field is dominated by men, it's high salaries, it's competitive, and then as soon as women come in, the salaries go low, and the whole almost environment changes, and they call it the feminization of that particular, it could be psychology, psychiatry, and the men sort of leave then because it sort of becomes a woman-dominated discipline. So that is very interesting. That it's also coming across out in STEM. in some STEM disciplines. So Martha, again, you talked about this in that wherever there's gender inequality, the closer we move to being as 50-50, as gender equal as we can be as a society, there's segregation that is going on in STEM, which I found so fascinating, because you think the opposite would be happening, right? In that the more equal we become, the more equal STEM then will become. So why do you think that is? Anyone can.
It is hard to know. It is hard to know why. It is easy to talk about stereotypes. It is easy, and there are, and you both, so Stephen mentioned then about how we raise kids and girls and boys differently, etc. But then we see, for example, in the Arab countries, we do see women going into STEM and not so much men, even into technologies. That's why it's interesting to compare countries, because sometimes we have some inferences in which we think that women are not going to certain fields because they want to balance their life, and then we see that in other countries actually they do. So therefore it might not be that might not be the reason. There is it's interesting to look at the Scandinavian countries and how the different Scandinavian countries also behave, and because we think there is more equality. Spain is a very equal country too. They have a lot of policies for equality, but we do see that girls actually are going less into technologies. One of the countries in which the differences between, we have data from 2005 to 2019 now, for example, in our projects, and we see that in Spain and Portugal there is less girls going into technology, and also in some Scandinavian countries, while in some Arab countries where there is more inequality or less equality policies, let's say, more girls are going into technology or certain male dominated STEM fields. That's why I think it is important, I think, to go 2 steps back instead for thinking that we know, and starting to look and realize that we actually don't know so much. There is research also for the United States, the academic science and medicine, in which they look, and there was a lot of harassment into these science fields in which women are maybe might feel not so welcome. Very often we see that when women go to university, after 2-3 years, they drop out. When they don't drop out and they continue, they start working, but they also drop out from those jobs and take another job. And when they work in the STEM fields, they tend to work in more, what we call a stereotype, it's very stereotyped female jobs, for communication, etc. I think the governments need to start looking at it seriously, looking at the policies they are doing, looking at what is happening, and then act accordingly. Because thinking that women want to go get more balance and that there is no balance in the STEM or technologies, I mean, I'm not sure. That's also very stereotypical. It works very much as networks. So basically there is women in a field and they feel attracted to there because they feel maybe more secure in that sense, because there is more women, or maybe they don't feel welcome. So I think there's still a lot to look at.
Very good points. Yeah. Anyone else want to add?
Yeah, I would like to add. We're talking about equality, but there's still a lot of things to do about equality. I mean, for instance, in Spain, I think we're not bad in terms of equality. We have a good social policy to keep us keeping the balance between family and working lives. We have almost free kindergarten. So when we go and have children, we have somebody or a place to take care of them and so on. But when we're talking about equality, I also mean those roles models that tell us that women can be president of the government, president of the state, the head of technical companies all over the country, and so. And this is still in Spain. There are few examples of this. There are mainly men who lead the countries, who lead the companies, and so on. So that equality also means that we need more role models that tell everybody, especially girls, they can do whatever they want to do. They can be head of the university, head of the government, head of the company, head of anything they want. So I think we need to change on that.
Thank you, Amaia. Anyone else want to add any thoughts, perhaps? You know what I did find very interesting with that one about the gender equality, the more countries are equal, the more segregation grows in STEM. What I found researching African countries specifically, because there's been a push for women empowerment, especially girls and women going to school, getting them into STEM. And there's just been a focus on women and girls empowerment. And in essence, then the boys have been left behind. The boys feel excluded because all the education and the push has been focusing on girls and women. So I guess in a way, what the research has said is that when women then get into these fields, the segregation becomes more because the patriarchy becomes more intense, because again, the focus is on them and not the boys. So what are the boys' roles? What are they doing? And it just becomes social culture, what we sort of mentioned earlier, in that, as Stephen said, COVID sort of reset and we sort of went back to what we know, in that if things like this happen, the woman will be in the private domain, in the homes, nurturing, child rearing, and the man will be in the public domain, working. So that then this whole thing of all these funds and energy and campaigns to women, girl empowerment, actually then the backlash to that would be the patriarchy would be more entrenched, the segregation, the exclusion of women getting into these still male dominated fields, even from young children. This is what the research in Africa has shown in terms of that. So what I also wanted to ask then is to how then do we raise the consciousness of girls, boys, in knowing that prejudices like this do exist, whether they're conscious of them or not conscious of them. But clearly STEM research has shown, as you said, there's harassment, there's hostility, women are unwelcome. Why is that? How do you think we can raise the gender bias consciousness that exists, the subconscious prejudice that exist for women in STEM? What do you think? Maybe we could start at a younger age. Stephen, what do you think? Because you work with children.
That's a really good point. I'm trying to find an answer which is specific to your question. I might take this a little broader to start with. So this isn't going to be true of everywhere around the world. This is probably more true of the places that I have been in classrooms in, which is going to be Europe, specifically UK, the US, but to some extent in China as well, where I've spent a large amount of time in classrooms, and in Jordan. So actually in the Middle Eastern countries and the United Arab Emirates as well, is that boys will look up to female role models in exactly the same way that they'll look up to male role models. Now that I know that is not true in every culture in across the world. So this is not a blanket statement. But in countries where we can make a difference, I think to allow others to follow, because there has to be a starting point, right? You have to start this process somewhere, and then others can follow when they see it works. I have never come across boys who who don't look up to someone like Kamala Harris or a Malala or a Jess Watkins. Jess Watkins was the first Black woman to serve a full term on the International Space Station. The fact that I probably have to explain that when I say her name is exactly the issue that we're talking about, right? But I've heard and seen plenty of boys in classrooms go, wow, that's so cool, I want to be an astronaut too. Didn't matter what sex the person was who was talking to them about it. Because probably there is that inherentness that the boy will be told from an early age, or feel like, well, I can do anything I want anyway. I can be anybody I want to be if they're in the right circumstance. So I don't think having a surfeit, if you like, of female role models is going to cause those issues for boys. Now, again, I know that's not necessarily true of everywhere around the world. But I think it's also about having, they're extraordinary role models, if you like. And I take Amaia's point that you need those people in power to be able to see, I can become that person. As a girl, I can go on to do that job because there is a girl doing that job right now. But I think it's probably we're lacking the ordinary heroes, if that's a term. We're possibly lacking the visual sort of female pilots, as an example, so that girls can say, well, I can do anything. It's not either this area or that very top area, but it's everywhere in between as well. That's my answer for now, but I might come back to that one later.
Yes, thank you so much, Stephen. Anyone else want to add?
Yeah, I would like to add, yeah. So I agree with Stephen, and he mentioned role models, and Amaia mentioned role models also before. It's true that there's so many role models for women, for girls, actually, in some fields. Actually, if you're a little girl and then you sit in a classroom, sometimes I wonder how they can be so good at school, because usually in our PISA evaluation, girls tend to score better than boys in most countries, in all countries, in most fields. And if you think about being a little girl and then you're studying literature, and there is hardly any female writers that are actually textbooks, like around 7%. There is much more female writers than that, that's for sure. If you look into philosophy, there is only men that we read. And those men didn't say very nice things about women, actually. They, if we look at Aristotle, that they say, well, women are imperfect men. Rousseau said that girls don't like reading or writing, they only like sewing. I mean, there is all kind of sentences that these philosophers said about women that are not really nice to listen to. And we look at them from a gender perspective, like how are the girls sitting there looking at what actually they say about women. And there was none of them said anything nice, actually. If you look at history, I mean, where are the women in those books? Where are the pictures? And usually pictures of women are very stereotyped, even in countries actually in that actually promote gender equality. But if you look into science, then, I mean, Stephen mentioned some women, and there are women actually did things and we don't even know who they are. So I think there is a lot of things to change. The textbooks needs to be changed, and at least explain to girls where they are still looking and why they are not in the picture. And look also at the history of women, like what were they doing where men were actually fighting in wars, for example. They were taking care, which is very important, taking care of families, taking care of the land, taking care of the houses. It's like it doesn't matter. So basically we are saying, oh, what the women did during centuries didn't matter, right? And they were actually taking care of life. So, well, men were fighting, basically. So, but there are actually many women. We are now at the OECD working with a project called STEM, Girls STEM. And the idea is actually to bring role models into the classroom. I know there is thousands of these initiatives. We are doing it at the policy level, at the higher level, in order to reach all the schools, because these initiatives reach very, very few schools, very, very few girls, sometimes private schools, and they don't go to all. So yeah, so I think that's very important to change a little bit how we study it.
Thank you, Marta. Amia, you want to add?
And I do agree with the points raised.
Maybe just
okay, great.
Maybe
okay,
just
go ahead,
one quick addition to that is the uncomfortable truth probably is, and this for us sitting on the panel, because we're all involved in trying to address this issue now and have it not be an issue in 20 years' time. The uncomfortable truth probably is that this is more than one generation's worth of an issue to solve. Right, we have the challenges that we've all noted that are out there and wide that we have to address almost before we can grow the world of STEM and girls' involvement in STEM. There are these more fundamental aspects. So it's possible that what's going to happen is that whether we are successful in getting more girls in STEM will be measured on the number of girls who are going into STEM. Which is possibly an unfair measurement on this generation of people attempting to solve the issue, when we maybe should be looking at the metrics of exactly what Marta was talking about. What are the percentage of women who are actually involved in writing textbooks, in speaking directly to the kids, giving them their perspectives, building the chance to build these role models and these sort of addressing some of these base societal changes, and then for the next generation to be in that strong position to say, well, you know, hopefully in 20 years' time, you ask that question, what are the 3 obstacles? And they're not there. Those obstacles don't exist. That would be the measurement, I guess, of success for what we're doing right now.
Good point.
Very, very good point, Stephen. You're absolutely right. And you're right in that this is the next question we talk about, in that educationally, I mean, little children, the first thing they see are the books at schools, the drawing. When they see scientists, it's a man in a white coat. It's never a woman. It's not a Black woman. It's always a man, and all those things. What are they actually? It's very subconscious bias, right? And that certain disciplines are for certain people. So if you don't look like that subconsciously, then you're not supposed to, or you're not encouraged to go into that. You're sort of going against the trend. So then this goes to my next question, is how do we then change the perceptions of parents, teachers, even friends later on in life? Because parents are the first people children encounter, right? The parents are the people that gender the children. So they know they will gender them in terms of the clothes they buy, the toys that they buy for them. So even with those toys, they want to sort of encourage certain skills. So if I'm giving my daughter Lego, I'm encouraging a certain aspect of her that I want to build, as opposed to if I'm giving her a mini kitchen, for example. So all those things, that girls are encouraged to be caring and nurturing, and boys are allowed to get Lego, and they're encouraged to learn and build analytical skills very early. So then the question is, how do we change the perception of the parents?
Well, I will start if you don't mind. So first of all, what we need to change the perception is to change the way we behave in front of them. For instance, when we have children, usually, well, of course, I'm talking about Spain, maybe Marta will have a broader perspective, but is the woman who have the maternity leave, and nowadays we can share that paternity leave with the parent. But still, I'm seeing a lot of women who work part-time after they have their first children. So if we talk about, if we want to have a model for our children to change their perception, first we have to change the model, our family model, because this is an example for them. If they see that the mother is the one that is working part-time, taking care of the children, then we want to give them good examples of people they don't know, and how they, well, the more impact the people that have more impact on them is the family, not only the people that they see in the books, that of course need to be changed, and we need to be more pushing on the types of examples that they're giving. So we need to give them examples outside the family, but first of all inside the family, and we need to try to share parenting, try to share nutrients, try to share working, and that's the first example that they should have. And of course then by giving that example, they will learn that they have to cooperate in class, they have to cooperate at home, and that they have to regardless of being a female or male, that you have to work together and try to do as better as you can. That's my first point.
Good, I agree with Amaia. I think we should look back, and I'm not sure that from gender equality, the ones that benefited the most were women. I think men have benefited a lot from gender equality, but I think any man wants to go back to how society was 100 years ago, because men now are taking care of the kids, they're enjoying their children. They're also enjoying women more, that are more educated. I mean, so I think equality benefited everyone. So sometimes men might be a bit scared of what is going on with more equality, but I do think they benefited. And yeah, more countries are giving fathers paternity leave. I think that's very important, that the leave when a couple have children is equal, because then when you're going to hire someone, there's not going to be an issue. There is a bit of trap into the flexi time and part-time jobs. Some countries like the Netherlands, instead for providing daycare for kids, provided flexi time in jobs for women. And over the years, we realized that actually women were actually being really damaged from there, because their career were not advances, the salaries were lower. And you know that Europe has a very high rate of divorce. So when it comes to divorce, then we go to the pensions, and the women in Netherlands are the ones with the lowest pensions in Europe, for example, because they had this flexibility in jobs to allow them to continue working, but it turned back to them. So So there is all kind of policies that very often are done for actually to allow women to balance, and they end up by actually being a bit of a danger for them. The Scandinavian countries went through that with these long maternity leaves. We saw that men were advancing their careers in their 30s, and women actually were not, and were taking roles that were more adapted to get balance. And at the end of the day, they went back. There is a chart that for me is very sad to look. It's called the scissors charts, where when men have children, they are starting to get higher salaries and better jobs. And when women have children, they get lower salaries and worse jobs. So it's actually pretty sad when you go to the 30s. So for men, having children has a bit of, how would you call it? Men that have children have higher salaries than men that don't have children. And it's the reverse for women. So that's very, very interesting, because that's why the data hides a lot of actually policies that were done in benefit for women, but actually turned back to them. What I suggest, and from the beginning, is that we need more research and understanding how policies are behaving and where they are doing actually to women and men. And men are perceived as good managers when they have children, and women are perceived like they have to take care of their children, therefore they might not be able to be managers. So there is a lot of perception, there's a lot of literature on that, actually, on how men and women are perceived when they have families. And funny enough, it's always in detriment for women. There is always something in detriment for women. So that's interesting.
Yes. I'll actually answer that specific point later. I want to hear from Stephen.
I think Marta summed it up in one word, and I think it was scared. I think so many parents are scared that they're doing it wrong. That there is a right now, fundamentally, there are good ways and bad ways to parent, but it's never, when you have the best intentions, you're never doing it wrong. Now, I'm not a parent, but as a teacher, having met thousands of parents, the only questions I was ever asked as a teacher were to elicit either the fact that, no, I'm on your side, you're doing it right, you're okay, or how do I do this better? Am I doing this right? So I think we need a lot more confidence building in generally in parents. You see all of these instructional books and videos and films and whatever about parenting, but they always seem like a set of rules. They always seem like here's the top 10 things you should be doing, which is so situational and so culturally biased. And if it should actually be, hey, here's a bunch of things you could be doing, and see how it works for you. I think the fact that a lot more countries now have that balance between maternity and paternity leave, I think is great for men. I think being able to spend time at home with your kid is fundamental to both the kid's upbringing, but also to the man and their parenting skills and their understanding of gender and the gender bias that they might bring to things. So I think, the big question I always get asked is, we've got a school holiday coming up. What should I do with my kids? Should I be reading? Should I be doing math? Should I, what should I be doing to keep learning? And my one answer was always, just go play with them. Go outside and play with them. Find a board game and play with them. Hell, if they're online, if they're on a digital device, even, and that's what they enjoy, go spend time with them on that. I know that lots of parents think that's the wrong way of parenting, but just go spend time in their space and you learn so much about them. But somehow we are so reticent, we are so scared about doing that, either because we think it's wasted time or because that's wrong parenting. And we need to break down that barrier of this idea of being wrong when you're trying to get to know your kid a bit better and understand them a bit better.
Thank you so much for that, Stephen. And that's very true. I can understand the being scared part. I'm also not a parent myself, but I'd like to think is that I've educated myself enough. So if I were to have children one day, I would sort of want to do it in a different way to how I was raised, and that you being a girl, you're expected to do A, B, and C, and boy, D, E, F. So it is important that parents become educated as well, so they'll be able to teach their children. On your point, Martha, social science has found that the reason why, for example, when women and men go into jobs, and why men get paid more than women, even in the same job, is because society still expects the man to go home and provide for the family, right? So to them in the system, it thinks the man deserves more money because he has a lot more people to take care of. And then, of course, when they have children, it's more people, right? And then women, when they have children, the thinking is that, well, she's going to be out for maternity leave for an extended period of time, so why should we need to keep her paying the same salary as men? It's just the policies and industry, it's still stuck 500 years ago, although we've moved forward and are better humans, I would like to think, and evolved and more educated, but still industry and policies clearly have not. We have 2 more minutes before we take questions from the audience. So I wanted to talk about, for example, how then do we recruit girls more to come into STEM? Because I've seen that across the board literature has shown that STEM and people entering STEM, boys and girls, the numbers are low and the numbers are still lower for girls. So what can be done to encourage girls more to pursue these fields? Because from the research that I've done, I've seen that girls do want to take these fields, and then as soon as they get into high school, they sort of ostracized for being good at mathematics or being good in science. And then by the time they get into university, oh my goodness, it's a whole nother ball game there. Now it's other adults from other areas ostracizing them as well, even the professors teaching there. So then how do we equipped girls to be stronger in a way, to persevere and be resilient and go all the way through into these STEM disciplines and get their doctoral degrees? What would you suggest?
I'm going to oversimplify the very first step, I think, a little bit, because then we can get into deeper about the how you encourage and keep them. I think STEM subjects taught in schools, traditionally, it's very dry. So even to the point about, oh, it's the man who's being shown in the textbook in a white lab coat. Well, that's one way of showing what science or what a doctor is, right? But it's a very dry, typical version of what a doctor is, and it doesn't look fun or interesting. So there has to be that sense of fun and engagement. And I think that by looking at what attracts girls into certain subjects, and often there is that sense of creativity, there is that sense of planning, there's detail, there's color. Boys like all those things as well. They just won't tell you because it's not what they're focused on. But girls will tell you that those are the things. I want to find something I'm passionate about. So where there is an entry into the real world, where they're doing real world problem solving, that's the things that we typically know that girls like doing. That will encourage boys as well. And I think that often in our school systems right now, STEM subjects are just a very dry version of that. So we just step up the fun and engagement in the first step. And then I'll let you discuss the deeper ramifications when they get into further education.
Yeah, and I do agree with Steven. And what I think is important when we're focusing on why they don't choose STEM at university, or they don't choose STEM at the vocational training. So they have to start choosing, at least in Spain, when they are 14, 16 years old, they have to start selecting in high school, mathematics, science, or literature, history, and so on. But the damage is done much earlier. So just after they're 6 years old, the stereotypes arise. So we have to work with them before that age. And of course, what Steven was mentioning of teaching STEM by doing, not by showing books, and by it's quite easy to teach science, to teach mathematics with really good examples, to teach in a lab, to teach with robotics. There are a lot of different ways of teaching STEM in a more practical way, in a more doing but learning approach. But it's important the message I want to leave is that the earlier the better. After 6 years, the stereotypes arise. So we have to act before that age, and of course, go on working to avoid those kind of stereotypes, and to get the perception that girls are equal than boys, and the performance in science, in STEM, in mathematics is at least equal, or sometimes even better than boys.
Thank you, Amaia. Martha, you want to add?
Yes, I fully agree with Amaia. It's definitely, we need to start early. We have data for 5 years old in which girls are actually very open to study anything. Boys already are starting the male stereotypes very early, earlier than girls. Boys tend to avoid what is girly, and reading is very girly because girls, for some reason, are extremely good at reading very early, and it takes a very long time for boys to become good. So the boys are already kind of growing away from it. Now there is something that is interesting, and it happens at puberty, with girls starting to say they are bad at maths and they are bad at the sports. So we need to start working early with them to see that they are not actually very good at maths and good at the sport. There is the stereotypes are very interesting and how they grab into something. You are from South Africa, you know, in South Africa, boys don't play soccer, but girls do. And in Europe is the opposite. And I've seen little South African boys in Paris refusing to play soccer because it's a girls thing. And these girls things actually preventing boys actually for reading, which is very important, I'm thinking, because even though girls don't go into STEM, boys are actually dropping out of the school more than girls and being low skill and going into the not very good career paths either. So looking into stereotypes early. Also, this idea of girls, they can actually go for their passions, and boys need to go and, you just said, Zama, men are supposed to be the breadwinners, right? And the ones that bring the money. So, and it is thrown in their heads, probably they see their parents and they see the society like that. So they are less reticent to take the technology or careers they don't like so much because they are gonna have good salaries. But parents, and we see also when we ask parents in our data, they encourage girls to follow passion. And sometimes passions are not necessarily those actually having good jobs. For example, classical, when a girl is very creative, like reading, say, I'm not gonna force her to do maths because she's so creative, that's what she likes. But when a boy is like that, parents worried, oh, he's not taking maths, he wants to be creative and that's not good. Therefore, I'm gonna put a private teacher to get him into maths. So there is behaviors, there is a lot of behaviors from parents, from the school, from society in general that actually encourage these different paths where girls can follow passions and boys need to follow money, kind of.
And that, thank you, very good point, Martha, in that it's parents, it's schools, it's society, all these things that are sending messages consciously, subconsciously, that boys are supposed to be doing one thing, girls and other things. So very good point. Diego, I see you've joined us.
Yeah, because we have questions. We have questions from the audience,
yes,
and also Rocio and me had questions.
Okay.
So,
well, then, you know what? Seeing that we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to, I think it's better to hear first the question of the audience. And after Diego, I really like your question. Then I'm going to pass because we don't have a lot of time. Then I think that, do you want to read, Diego, the question we have from...
Yeah, I don't know why it's not now in the chat, but someone asked, I think Jaime were asking, how do you think that STEM education is impacting our daily life? Is very common, or is just at the school?
That was a very good question. Yes, I saw it.
STEM is our world is driven by STEM, is driven by science, but technology, and mathematics. I think the best example is the pandemic, COVID. Is science which has made our daily life being better. Even with the pandemic, we got a vaccine thanks to technology, thanks to basic science that was being carried out for 30 years beforehand with no practical results, and that wide experience in science was implemented into a vaccine in a record time of 1 year and a little bit more. So I think that's the best example of how science can affect and can improve our daily life.
Making children aware that STEM is all around them all the time, and so that it's not this kind of thing off to the side, or a subject that they do at school. In fact, one of the big things that we do at LEGO Education is to make teachers aware of making kids aware that STEM is around them all the time. So seeing a building, seeing an amazing house and saying, what a feat of engineering, isn't that cool? You cross a bridge, it's engineering. They're on their iPads watching YouTube, that's your technology, and so on. You know, take them to the supermarket with you and get them to add up the things they're putting in the basket, get them to pay with, or we all have credit cards now, right? But get them to pay with money, and that's math. I mean, it's all around us all the time, and making kids aware that that's what it is and that it's out there in the real world. It's not this sort of slightly sterile subject that they learn in school that doesn't really have anything to do with them, I think is a great way of showing them how it impacts their lives on a daily basis.
That's great.
Yeah,
So
I think,
yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that absolutely all of those things. I think the pandemic, if anything, I've seen a lot more young girls want to become scientists because of that, because you actually saw that something happened. It affects all of us. So the people who were the rock stars are the scientists in the lab testing for vaccines that would save everyone. So that in itself, I think science, STEM in general, if you want to be, I think, a cool kid, you need to go into STEM. That's what they should be saying. Yeah. Are there any other questions, Diego, from the audience?
Well, yeah, Rocío, let's go.
From the audience, I don't see any.
No.
And seeing that we only have 4 minutes, I think it's more interesting the questions that Diego is going to ask you, because it's going to be more helpful for the audience, are mainly students are participating in the hackathon. Please go ahead, Diego.
Yeah, thank you, Rocío. Well, I have some quotes that I took from your chat, what that was very interesting. I was thinking, I wish the government was here, but in fact it is. So the analysis is great, and I'm sure that we can take a lot of advices from here. So you were talking, Marta, we're talking about giving references and role models to the girls. And that's also that's something you mentioned right now, Zama, that the rock stars now are the scientifics. So that's a great advice that we should take to build something in the hackathon. And Stephen, we're talking that if we don't want to talk about the topic in 20 years to this topic about the difference between girls and boys in STEM, we should do now things. We should do something right now. We should take the deal right now. So, and Amaia also were saying that regardless if the student is a female or a male, one way to teach them equality is put them together to working together, collaborating together, and as soon as possible do it in the school. That's a great advice. So my last question is just think about these girls and boys that we have this in this hackathon. We have 15 girls participating and 11 mentors, females. So that's also a great representation of females. And I would like to ask you some advice for them in which area they should be focused during the hackathon, in which main point they should be thinking to promote the STEM between young girls. I mean, when they were thinking about their projects and how to build a digital tool, and which should be the main focus that they should discuss or they should build from that.
So I might suggest to them that they absolutely become the mouthpiece for their group, that they become the one who is presenting or you know, presenting the flow of their ideas, that we see them, that they're visible, because I think that's something that we're hearing right across this panel throughout this hour, is that it's just there's this lack of visibility. So if anything, I'm sure, I'm 100% confident they'll know where they want to focus and they'll know what they want to achieve out of this, but that let's hear it and let's see it and let's have them be forefront of those presentations when we get to that. Because we want role models for girls, and they are going to be those role models for sure.
Thank you.
I could say one of the issues why girls are our mentors, I think that we need to look at is the fact that girls are not boys, and the world is being seen always from the male perspective, right? So male are very competitive. We see in our data, girls like to be more cooperative, collaborative. But the way women access the world was by becoming like men, because that's the only role model we had, right? Now it's time to change. Now it's time for girls to be girls, for women to be women. And we are not that competitive. And being competitive can be good to get a job. But once you are into the job, men continue to be competitive with their own colleagues, where women tend to collaborate more. And that's a very good role model, right? So it's time to appreciate how women and girls work that is different to men, but as valuable. So how can these young girls and these mentors can actually continue working their own world and yet going into a world that is very competitive like the STEM? And as Stephen said, how we can make STEM studies less sterile, less more attractive, let's say, for everyone, not only for girls, but for everyone.
Oh, great, thank you.
Oh, I just want to say something. I absolutely agree with Amaia and Martha. I think also girls need to be confident. I think that's one thing girls seem to be lacking. They could be the most brilliant person in the room, but if they lack confidence, no one would really know about their ideas, their innovation, all of that stuff. So I think it's important as well. And what you were saying, Martha, in that, you know, we need to celebrate femininity. If there's certain aspects of femininity in all STEM disciplines, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to be able to collaborative and work with people and have good interpersonal skills. That's a positive thing. But in STEM, like you said, it's very cutthroat, it's competitive, and that's just the environment that it is. So I think we need to make sure that differences should be celebrated, because STEM wins. The more different people that are in it, they are adding their ideas, their creativity, STEM wins and humanity wins because of that. So
I would add something to this. Women need to be confident. To women are confident in a different way. Well, first, sometimes it's hard to be confident when you're a woman after all the centuries we had behind, and when you're sitting in a school and there's no women to be seen. So I think women need to be understood the way they are. So therefore, when I hear professors at university saying, well, it's your fault, women don't participate in classroom and men are always speaking, and we all have experienced that in any meeting, men take over, someone has to stop them and say, oh, the women are talking, or get them to speak, but from their confidence, not from a male confidence. We have different way of being, so we should not change women or the way they are and keep them with their quality.
yes, I agree.
Well, thank you very much, all of you. Just make a little comment. Yesterday, we have Walt Patterson, who is from Chatham House and has a long career in sustainability and ecological affairs. And he was telling us that in the 70s, when he was with his wife, and his wife said to him, you know what, you are very creative. You are very good with these things on ecology. I'm going to be the breadwinner and I'm going to be a dentist. And it has been 40 years. We are still where we were in that point, that those people are still the exception. Then I'm going to end with that. I'm going to thank you, all of you, for being here with us today. And I wish you a very good day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rosia, Diego, Amaia, Stephen, and Marta. It was incredible. And thank you for asking me to be moderator. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Zama, for such a great job. And Marta, Stephen, Amaia, and Diego too. Thank you for being with us today. Bye-bye.
See you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.